Whether your beer is in a bottle, can, or glass, kick back and relax. It's better on draft.
Welcome, everybody. Episode number 256, Better on Draft Podcast. My name is Ken. Thank you so much for joining us. I am happy to be here. It is Friday evening, and I am not going hard, but I'm sticking with the liquor route today. I've got a Burners, Diet Burners, and Canadian Club, and then I also got Hatazaki, just chilling right here. So sticking with the whiskey tonight. I went a little hard on the Oddside Ales seltzer yesterday, watching the draft. So let's take it easy tonight. Rob, what are you drinking?
I am definitely not going easy, especially with the draft. Even though we did get our pick, we got more to go. I am kind of triple right now. I've got a Eastern Market Brewing's Story Horse, their dry Irish stout. I got a little bit of sipping whiskey myself with the Russell's Reserve Black is Beautiful edition. And also having a Black is Beautiful stout as well. The Black is Beautiful from Five Shores here in Balula, Michigan.
All right. And Dan, what do you got over there?
It's Beulah, Rob. Not whatever you just said.
Yeah,
sorry.
I know. Hey, it's up north. I don't know where it is.
Love it. I'm going with the Stoli and seltzer today. Good old go-to the last couple of months.
All right. And we do have a guest in the chat today. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
So my name is Aaron Hose, and I'm a documentary filmmaker based in Orlando, Florida. And for the past couple of years, we've been working on a feature-length documentary called One Pint at a Time, which focuses on diversity in the craft beer industry. So we follow a number of Black brewers and beer influencers that, together they're working to reshape the future of this beverage, man, America's favorite beverage.
Why, what came up that wanted you to create this documentary and document the change?
So basically, around 2014, my wife and I went to Asheville, just kind of on a road trip. And it was fresh off of having been voted Beer City USA. And I just wanted to do something different. I was a kind of a Yangling drinker, a Stella, a Miller Lite drinker, but in Asheville, I got to try something that was completely different. It was the first time I've had a flight of beer. And in that flight was a Catawba Brewing Farmer Ted's Cream Ale, which blew my mind. And from that point forward, I was kind of bitten by the craft beer bug. And my wife and I just, every time we went on road trips ever since, we wanted to seek out new breweries because craft beer became kind of an adventure for us. And yeah, that's really what it was. And over the years, we realized that we were either the only or among the very few people of color in these tap rooms. And, being a documentary filmmaker for the past, let's say close to 20 years, I just got really curious as to why. So I started exploring the industry, and, my research led me to, a number of organizations and folks, and to kind of understand the state of things. And I realized that it's a heavily white male-owned industry, and minorities own very little of the annual revenues, and even worse, like Black-owned breweries is less than 1% of all of the thousands of breweries that are in existence today. When we started this project, there was around 6,000-ish breweries. Now you're looking at about 9,000 or so. And Black-owned breweries are still less than 1% of that landscape. So the documentary really kind of delves into a little bit of the context of, why there may be so few Black-owned breweries in this country. And also it follows the journeys of a number of Black brewers that are, trying to make their mark in the industry in different parts of the United States.
Okay. Now, one of the issues that hits hard, at least for me, when I was watching the clips, that the access to becoming an owner and becoming a part of this multi-billion-dollar industry is pretty hard. We talk to quite a few breweries that are here in Michigan and some that are outside of Michigan who do not talk about or even show that they've gone through these struggles of trying to create breweries. What do you see as the biggest hurdle for Black breweries and Black brewery owners to be in order to open up their shops?
You know, the United States is so large and vast, and every state has its own relationship to the minority communities in that particular state. So it really varies, the challenges they do. And it just really depends on where you grew up. Like the gentleman in the South in Louisiana, he has had to get involved in kind of reworking state legislation in Louisiana so that he could better position himself to get his product out to his customers in Louisiana, right? Mm-hmm. And then here in Florida, it's not as tough as Louisiana, because in Louisiana, you have a lot of those laws that have kind of stayed from the Prohibition days. So I think, in at least for me, I can't speak for the whole country, but I feel like a lot of it has to do with, you know, if you need a loan, it's kind of like getting a house, right? If you need a loan, the decision makers are going to look at you a little differently because of your skin color, and they may not sign off on you going in this direction and starting a craft brewery because you're not white. You know, there's a lot of redlining that's, you know, historically been in this country, and I'm sure it still continues today. But those are some of the things that I would say has a lot to do with why you don't see a lot of Black-owned breweries popping up. You see a lot more white-owned breweries, you know, popping up in areas because the real estate is less costly and it's easier for them to get approved at all levels. And they come in and, you know, oftentimes they gentrify the area. Some of it do it not even knowing that they're doing it. Some of them don't care. But that's just a situation that we're dealing with breweries that pop up. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. So there's kind of at least from what I was looking at from the information you gave us, that there's kind of a who's who in Black craft beer appearing in the new film with Dave Bracey and Ed Bailey, the guys who are obviously behind Barrel and Flow, formerly Fresh Fest, Dr. J, Nickel Jackson Beckham, Letitia Cook. I guess talk to us about being with and talking to such a group that, along with yourself, are trying to make craft beer more diverse.
Well, I have to admit that, you know, this is their life, right? I'm as a filmmaker, I'm the vessel to tell their stories. They do this every day, day in, day out. So I have an immense amount of respect and almost reverence for what they do, and love for what they do. And I think their contributions to the film, it's invaluable, really. You can't put a price tag on it. And I think it's important to share what they're doing to diversify the industry, because I feel like it hopefully will inspire others, you know, other people of color that are seeing what they've been achieving and what they're doing to change the industry to kind of step up and do the same. Because, you know, really it starts with the diversification of your customer base, right? So you get more people of color drinking beer, you get them inspired to get into the beer industry, and then you set up programs like what Beer Culture does to get them certified, to get, you know, advancement in the industry. And some of them may be inspired to own their own brewery. And then what do? Well, you got to find the capital to make it happen, right? And you got to connect with the right people to make it happen. You may be in a situation where there's no generational wealth, but hopefully you have a family of people that are band together and help you out to make it happen, right?
Right. Now, you've directed, produced, and edited quite a few documentaries. I was going through the list here. Definitely one of which I saw. I have not watched, but I saw the trailer for it today for Breakthrough, and I really want to watch that one now. But the other ones that you also had was A Fresh Perspective, and I was curious. Other than your trip to Asheville, unless that wasn't part of it, what inspired you to turn to the Fresh Fest? Turn that festival into an experience for film watchers to see?
Because that's actually where my research on this project kind of began. When I officially chose to take on this documentary as a feature-length project, we realized that we needed to start somewhere. And here in Orlando, we're talking, late 2017, there weren't any Black-owned breweries in the Orlando area. There were some minority-owned breweries, Latino, women, but no Black-owned breweries. The only one in this area was Green Bench in St. Petersburg. And then there was one, Bastet Brewing, that didn't have a place, they didn't have the location, but they were incorporated as a professional brewery. And they're in the film. But the idea was to just take a research trip to Pittsburgh during this event and meet people and kind of cast for the film from that event. But I think once we started interviewing the brewers that were there and the organizers, and we realized, the magnitude of what they'd done, because the Black brewing community is so small, but what they did reached far and wide across the US. I immediately decided to make that into its own short documentary, because I felt like if I did, they could use that piece to kind of continue to promote the event and garner money and sponsorships for future festivals, which they did. So it was kind of a in the moment decision to make A Fresh Perspective, but the idea was for it to be more like a networking trip and to gather interviews and then connect with people that could be in the feature film. And actually, A Fresh Perspective is being reworked as a segment of One Pint at a time. So it will be in the film in a different form.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to check that out. And unfortunately, I have not had a chance to make it to Fresh Fest pre-COVID. And I know now that it's been changed, now being reworked and renamed to the Barrel and Flow Festival, which I'm not making it this September either, which sucks as well. But yeah, well, it's not for lack of trying. There's just more important things for money to go towards than me driving out to Pittsburgh, where my favorite football team of all time is, to enjoy some beer. But we'll have to save that for next year. That's okay. But I kind of want to just talk about some of the other things now. Like last week, we had the Oscars, where presenters were talking about their inspirations that turned them to acting and directing. Tell us about what your inspiration was to become a filmmaker.
That's a long story, but I'll give you the short of it. I'll give you like the capsule version. So growing up, I was always enamored with the films of Spielberg and George Lucas, Star Wars, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones. The 80s was kind of like my sweet spot for movies. Nothing like it. There'll never be anything like it again. And I always thought I'd get involved in the film industry in some way, shape, or form. Originally, I thought it would be doing special effects. but that didn't pan out. I ended up in college as a computer engineering major. And on one of my nights off from class, I went to the theater and I saw this film called Only You. It's like a romantic comedy with Marissa Tomei and Robert Downey Jr. And I left the theater in tears because the film dealt with themes of, destiny and whether or not your fate is predetermined or if you can kind of like create your own destiny. And that really inspired me. And I at that moment decided to do the types of things that would make audiences feel the way I felt leaving that theater. Like originally, at that time, I thought maybe it would be get into acting, but it wasn't that. So I got into directing and producing over time, which allowed me to better control the emotions of the story in a project. So I went to film school here in Orlando at Valencia College, and I graduated. And then I started making my own films. And that's kind of where I am today. I'm an independent filmmaker. I do have a full-time job as a video producer. So I do have to pay the bills because filmmaking doesn't necessarily pay the bills, depending on the clients you have. But that's what I've been doing for the past 20 years. And I love it. And it's really my passion. And I feel like with craft beer, it's kind of become like a second passion almost. I've never made my own beer. I'm still learning how these things are put together, and it's fascinating. But I feel like at some point, I'll make a beer and I'll be proud of it. I'm sure it may not taste good, but I like it.
I think most of us, I know for myself, I think Ken and I both started on the Mr. Beer kits that we've made our first beers, and I mean they turn out okay. Pretty much I think as long as you follow the instructions well enough, it turns out okay.
I have a homebrew kit at home and I'm afraid to touch it, and I've had it for a while. But I would
it's easy.
I would much rather shadow a professional brewer and just see what happens. If I have some ideas for some ingredients and a beer that would taste a certain way, I'd rather hand that off to a professional brewer and just savor it when it's done instead of messing around with a homebrew kit at home and just blowing my house up,
As Dan said, it is very simple when you have some of these kits. I have the Northern Brewer kit. So my first beer was an amber, and then I went and I shopped and I built my own through Adventures in Homebrewing, a couple different beers with different yeasts and hops, and I was able to make a second batch following the first batch's instructions, because it was amber to an English mild, so it wasn't anything different.
Easy enough, especially for an English mild. But it's simple enough. If you can boil some water, especially with these like 5-gallon homebrew kits, you can make beer. You're not going to blow up your house. You might have a boil over depending on what you're making, but that's just an easy cleanup. I don't think you'll blow the roof off the place.
No, I'm exaggerating. It's just I realize, having shadowed a number of brewers over the years, that the way they phrase it is, brewing there's artistry involved, there's chemistry involved, but it's a lot of glorified janitorial work. And I'm like, no, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
That's the worst part about it is the cleanup. I'm not even gonna lie.
And it's serious.
Yeah.
It's been unfair the way that breweries around the country have been treated during the pandemic, because they are cleaner than all those bars and restaurants that the different state legislatures are partnering. They're packaging breweries with bars and restaurants. It's like, no, breweries are cleaner than bars and restaurants. They deserve their own set of regulations during the pandemic to keep them open. It's crazy.
Well, I guess that kind of leads me to a question then, because obviously with everything that has happened with COVID, that we've had breweries shut down, temporarily, we've had a lot that have shut down permanently. There's been a lot of rule changes and law changes that have happened from state to state. There hasn't been anything, federal that's gone across the board. But I guess for where you are in Florida, is there anything that you would want to see Florida do or had done that would have made things easier for these breweries to run and be open?
Well, there was a point where, and I think this might have been shared across most states, right? That it was curbside only. And you can't operate a brewery on curbside only. That's like a tiny fraction of their revenues. That's ridiculous. But again, I think it came because the people in charge in Tallahassee just didn't understand what breweries are. They just think of them as bars. They're a bar, or maybe they're a restaurant. So they obligated breweries to take on additional costs to retrofit their spaces to add restaurants, right? And to add on food licenses. That's crazy. That's a lot of money, right? And if you're a fledgling brewery, like in here in Orlando, we don't have like a bunch of breweries, but we're a fairly younger beer scene compared to other parts of the state. To obligate all of these folks to have food licenses or to retrofit their spaces to add restaurants, that's not fair. They're not making money, but you're expecting them to spend more money to then be open. That didn't make sense. So I'm glad now, like I'm sitting inside Castle Church Brewing Community, which is a great local brewery. And, they're allowed to be open. So everyone's allowed to be open. So there's not that restriction the way it was before. Right. So I'm happy that people, the folks here and all the other breweries in town are allowed to make, real money again.
Mm-hmm. And now that we heard that Orlando is going to be getting a beer spa, so I think the scene is starting to gonna get a little bit bigger. And who knows? I mean, there's got to be enough beer drinkers that are getting sick of going to Disney World. You got to have something else to do out there.
Well, Disney's good, but that's for the tourists, man. I only go to Disney during Food and Wine Festival in October, which is always a great thing to do.
Nice. Bringing up the point that you had brought up with the rules and the changes, trying to make a documentary while COVID is happening, how were you at getting around from brewery to brewery and getting in touch with people? Because I know a lot of people are probably a little bit iffy to, be front forward with a camera or be person to person. Did you do a lot of virtual conversations, or was everything, one-on-one in person?
So you hit it on the head, my friend. It was kind of half and half. So what we know today is that Zoom is the aesthetic of the pandemic. So everything became, focused around Zoom. So I had tons of conversations with folks that I documented in the film via Zoom. The ones that were further away from me that I would have to kind of, take a flight to get there. But the ones that were closer to me, we went out and shot with them because they had other challenges. They were trying to open up shop, and we wanted to document those challenges. I had brewers that were, delayed because their fermenters were coming from China, and China shut down. So they were waiting for their fermenters to show up. And guess what? Their fermenters showed up during the pandemic in the US. So it was all these little things that fortunately we made part of the film. So the pandemic actually is a central part of the film and the struggle to be a brewer, really. So there will be moments that you see around the pandemic. I personally, I think I stayed away for a little bit, but I wasn't going to let COVID keep me down. We went out there and we shot as best as we could, as safe as we could, to keep the project going. And, we're pretty happy with the stuff that we came out with regards to the pandemic. I think that'll be a pretty strong part of the film, I'm pretty sure.
Now, I have one more question, then I'm going to pass it to Dan because I think Dan's got a question for you.
I do.
But my question's fairly simple, fairly easy. You know, we've been talking about your career making movies. You're drinking a Maybach right now. What's your favorite or go-to styles?
So I'm gonna blame my wife for this, but my favorite go-to style is a high gravity imperial style, and one with adjuncts because I like tasting those sweet whatevers, be it pistachio or vanilla or chocolate. I love doing that. And typically I tend to err on the side of anything imperial. So an imperial IPA or an imperial New England IPA, an imperial sour. I love those big, bold, bodacious beers that just knock me off my feet after like one or two. That is something that I've become enamored with over the years. You know, I'm a Kolsch Pilsner guy to start off with, like, you know, just to go to the beach, have a good time. You know, give me a good Helles lager to go to the beach and just chill out. But as soon as I get that shower in and I'm relaxed, bring on the double-digit high gravity sauce. Those
There you go.
Yeah,
That makes me want to, since I believe our other co-host Wendy is going out to Perrin Brewing to go pick up my No Rules allotment, and I feel like I need to send you a bottle of this stuff, because if you like Mounds candy, just think of Mounds Bar in bourbon, and there you have it, 15%.
I'm telling you, my friend, you know, during this whole Black is Beautiful thing that happened last summer, which, by the way, is a significant part of the film too. It plays a pretty substantial part of the film, you know, following brewers and collabs around Black is Beautiful. I can't put a finger on how many BIBs I've tried and had. And I can't even rank them, but I'll tell you, I'm very proud of what the Orlando breweries had put out, because their flavors were great.
Nice.
But there were great flavors all over the country, because as I was trading, trading candles, as we call it, we were trading the candles. Those BIBs were fire. They were incredible. And they were coming from Virginia, North Carolina, Texas, some from Texas and California. And I can't even Maine. It's just Pennsylvania. I think one of my favorites was the one from 11th Hour in Pittsburgh. That was one of my favorites. And then Hidden Springs in Tampa. And then Tactical here in town in Orlando. Those were probably my top three that I had. And then there was one that was a collab with the Brew Brother, The Answer, and a bunch of other folks. And that was amazing. And I only got one can of that on the trade, and it was glory.
I think my top two were Bottle Logic out in Anaheim.
So good.
And then our local one here in Metro Detroit from Ascension Brewing. Theirs was completely out of this world. There were some really, really good ones. But Dan, I'm gonna hand it off to you because you got your question there.
I do. I'm actually glad you brought up Black is Beautiful, because, you know, we've really highlighted some of the issues over the last year about some of the ignorance actually that's come out. You know, this is a racist beer. You know, where's my white is beautiful? That sort of thing. You know, it's kind of tiresome when we try to educate some of the people. We've even done shows, you know, just in general, trying to, you know, put the spotlight on the kind of things that go on in the Black beer community. I'm hoping you could tell us, what are some of the positive responses you've received from the projects you've done from outside the Black community? What are some of the things, like, say, a white person has said in regards to what you've done?
You know, I haven't, you know, let me put it to you this way. So maybe this is because of where I'm based in Orlando, and we're a pretty diverse area. And I'm closest to Tampa, which is also very diverse. So I haven't had any kind of remarks in those veins in terms of oh, why are you doing this? Or, whereas white is beautiful or whatever, the folks that are here in town that participated in Black is Beautiful, they're all white-owned breweries. And they all had their own very valid reasons to participate. And the money that, they donated to the right organizations and all this stuff. And I supported that. Around here, we don't have the kind of, I hate to use the word segregation, but we don't really have that in this beer community the way we may have it in other parts of the country, right? So the folks that around here that jumped on Black is Beautiful did it with a full heart, and they were genuine. And a lot of them we interviewed, and some of them will be in the film. And we want to hold these people accountable to this long-term work of equality, because it's not just about making a beer and that's it, we've done our work. It's like, no, you have to do the work involved with the making of the beer, because the beer is just that conversation starter to get those people talking about things that they're uncomfortable talking about, right? Publicly. So, I mean, hopefully that answers your question.
It definitely does.
Sorry, Rob. I'm gonna ask one more question and pass it back to you. But staying on topic with your upcoming One Pint at a Time documentary, what is your goal for the consumer of the documentary? What is the main purpose and goal that you want them to take out of this documentary? I'm coming out of MJR. I just saw the documentary. You got a huge, you're in movie theaters. You're everywhere. The dream. I don't
well, thank you for giving me that vision. With theaters reopening, I would hope that's certainly the case.
I'm walking out. I just finished my Black is Beautiful from the bar over there. What do you want me to be thinking as I exit that documentary?
I think as a consumer, it really depends on your relationship to beer, right? I think with the film, what we want is to empower people of color like ourselves, right? My wife and I, to think about, if you're in a tap room, to understand that it's okay to be who you are, right? It's not all hate. A lot of folks are indeed friendly and loving, and beer doesn't discriminate. People do, beer doesn't.
Uh-oh, looks like we lost him. That's the
we got a picture now. We got a still shot.
the world of COVID. So
while
we
oh wait, he's back.
He's back. Here we go. Hey, Aaron.
We lost you for a moment there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where was I?
About 15 seconds ago.
Okay. So what I was gonna say is, if you're having that beer and you look like me or my wife, people of color, it's like, don't feel like this industry is not for you. If you like beer and love it enough to get involved in becoming a brewer or a brewery owner, that look at the stories of the folks that we have in film. Even though there are struggles, there are also triumphs. And there are also a number of people out there across the country and other parts of the world that are going to stand up for you and are going to help you get to where you want to be, right? That's really what we would want for consumers. For breweries, we would hope that this could be like a mirror to really look at if they're being diverse enough in their staff, in their customer base, and what are the steps that they may need to take to diversify. Because diversity is kind of the end, right? That we want to achieve, but diversification requires action. And that means that breweries have to take action. And a lot of breweries may feel like, well, why is that on me? Well, it is on you, because you have to make customers, diverse clientele, feel comfortable in your space. You have to create a safe space for everyone. And in that group of people that come here to pay you money for your beer, there may be a couple of people that want to get into the industry. And then why not set up programs, internship programs, training programs, where you can help them make that next step into the industry? Why not? You never know where that'll lead, but at least you can be that person, you can be that brewery, instead of just being the brewery that's like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, that is fair. Now, it's been about roughly, I think it's been like 3 years since the first Fresh Fest that happened, because that was back in 2018. Since then, I really haven't seen too many other festivals that were focused on Black breweries and Black businesses outside of Fresh Fest. I know that there was a little bit of traction in trying to do one here in Detroit. It unfortunately didn't happen. But hopefully this is something that we can, pursue going into maybe 2022. But how do you feel about the current progress in minorities and women in a diversification of craft beer? And I guess from your perspective, is the movement gaining from your perspective?
Yes, it's gaining, but there's a lot more work to do. So as you know, right, there are quite a few events out there that focus on women. So you have Beer de Femme. You have the Beers Without Beards event from Hop Culture. You have Femme Ale Brew Fest in South Florida, right?
Pink Boots has something too.
Well, yeah. Well, Pink Boots is the Bière de Femme, I believe, is kind of their allied beer festival.
Mm-hmm.
And then in California, you had I think it was called the Cold Chella, which was the largest Latino beer festival in the country. So there are events, they're out there, but did you realize that I named less than 5? Right? It's not a lot. No. And even with, let me just put this out there, even with Fresh Fest splitting up into Blacktoberfest and Barrel and Flow, that's just 2. Mm-hmm. That's still not enough. I know there's a Crafted for Action coming up in a few weeks in Atlanta, which will be a minority, beer conference, which will be kind of like a mini CBC for Black and Brown people. At least most of their speakers are Black and Brown and women. And that's organized by Atlanta Beer Boutique. So that's a good thing. But I think there need to be more. There need to be more events, because that's the other thing. Where do we get exposure to these beverages? Is at festivals. We don't necessarily go to breweries. One of the reasons is some of us don't feel welcome. It's not a malicious thing. We just don't feel welcome. But at festivals, you're outside, it's open, and you might be more apt to go to a festival. So if it's a Black beer festival or a Latino beer festival or women, female beer festival, you might be more interested in going, right? Because it's something different, it's something unique that you don't typically see in your neck of the woods. And I hope in your neck of the woods, my friend, that it happens soon, because you have a huge African-American community there. So I'm surprised that it's taken this long to take off. I really am.
We've got some a good group of guys here, especially with our other podcast, which I think will be jumping back on, being the Brewers brothers, with that group of Harry, Wayne, Sasha, and the whole crew. So hopefully there's something that we could work out here. But I think we're gonna pretty much go through our final questions here. So I'm gonna pass it off to Dan here. So I believe he's got his.
Yep, I've got kind of a two-part question here. I want to go back to beer specifically. First off, if we opened up your fridge right now, what kind of beer are we going to find?
My fridge depends on which fridge you open.
Oh,
If you open the main fridge in the kitchen, at the top shelf, you're going to find everything from braggots to sours to imperial stouts, some lagers and some porters on the top shelf. The beer fridge is replete with Belgian triples, some long aging stouts, some browns, some blondes. What else do we have? Oh yeah, my wife says we should open our own bottle shop. But yeah, we try everything, a little bit of everything as best as possible.
yeah, that's great, because me being a stout guy only, it's all you'll ever find in the house here. So it's good to see a diversity. Second question is, if you finally did decide to jump into brewing, whether you do it yourself or you decide to collaborate with a brewer, what kind of style would be your first style of beer that you decide to make?
You know, that's funny. We've been talking about this lately, and we actually signed up to be one of the collaborating vendors for Barrel and Flow Fest. So Day's been contacting me, trying to hook me up with a brewery to do a collab. So we don't really know what type of beer it would be. I want to make a big beer, but my wife doesn't want to make a big beer. So we probably would have two different ones. Which one would we have first? Oh, she's saying that we would have a Imperial Stout and a double IPA, probably those two styles.
Nice. Awesome. Rob, did you have another question?
Yeah, and first I was going to say my suggestion, an Imperial Stout with adjuncts to have it taste like a German chocolate cake. But that's just me.
Not a bad choice.
Not a bad choice.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's anything that tastes like chocolate. I'm in, man. Chocolate,
give them the recipe. Give them the recipe, and just give them the idea. They'll come up with the recipe and just leave it in their hands.
Just walk away.
Yeah, just walk away. Give them the idea.
Walk away and come back for release.
Yeah. But obviously we know that the film is currently in post-production, and that you plan on doing the world premiere in the fall of this year. But I was curious, going further and a little further into the future, are there any projects that you're looking to do?
Can't really divulge too much, but I'll say that for the past half year, while we've been doing post-production, there are a number of, I think, follow-up short documentaries a la Fresh Perspective that I want to complete, because I feel like they deserve to be these, smaller stories with bigger impacts that deserve to be told. And they probably could have worked themselves into the feature-length documentary, but I think they should be standalone pieces. So I'd say there's that. And yeah, we've been trying to also set up a series that kind of does the same thing as the feature, which is telling the story of women and minorities in the craft beer industry. But we'll see what happens with that. That will take some time to get off the ground. But that would be like a future project. That would be
nice.
Would be nice to have.
I would say hashtag come to Detroit. We got a scene here. Would love to have you here.
Yeah, and I listen. It was my first time in Detroit a few weeks ago, and it was cold, but we had a great time. We met some nice people. We had fun at Motown. We froze our asses off, but the beer was really good. We made our way out to Grand Rapids as well, and had some fantastic beer out there. And we can't wait to come back when it's a little warmer, because I can imagine it being super green and beautiful.
Well, pretty much when you come out here, it's a roll the dice thing, because today it's 53, yesterday it was 33, and the day before that it was like 81. So you're pretty.
So kind of like Florida.
Yes,
Temperamental like Florida.
You're rolling the dice.
81 today or 91 today, 52 tomorrow. That's
Right.
crazy.
Exactly. Ken?
I'll always suggest, if you're looking for great scenery, to come in the early fall of Michigan and head up to the Upper Peninsula. Easily some of the best driving that you'll be able to do, where you can just kind of get lost looking at everything. And there's plenty of great breweries up there too. Cheap, easy plug, but I have an app that I created called the Michigan Brewery Map app. So if you're in Michigan, download it. It shows you every single brewery in the state. It'll also tell you if there's a patio, if there's, for instance, your significant other only likes wine or cider, if they sell wine or cider, so you know what you're getting when you get into there. With the upcoming update where you're going to be able to search by days open. So how many times have we all gone to a brewery not realizing that it's a Monday and they're closed that day to brew? So want to make sure I plug that real quick, just because we've put a lot. The app developer has put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. I just bug him asking him when it's going to be done, so I appreciate Meth Tech. My final question to you is very simple, very easy. Bud, Miller, or Coors? What are you drinking?
None.
None? Oh. So if I handed you I handed you 3 beers for free, and I said you can have one for free. Take a load off. You're not going to drink any of them?
Well, maybe Miller if it's High Life.
Okay, I'll accept that as an answer.
I'm saying, what about a PBR?
I was going. If we get into that, then I gotta ask him if he wants Natty Light or Natty Daddy.
No.
Natty Daddy, that's
Natty
like
Daddy.
10%. So
Yeah, Natty Daddy.
You know what, Aaron? That's in your wheelhouse. That's double-digit percentage beer, Natty Daddy.
Get that hot 25-ounce tall boy too.
Better on Draft. That's gonna do it. Aaron, where can they find you, and where can they find the documentary when it comes out? Where is it going to be distributed?
So you can follow us now at One Pint Film on Instagram. We are finalizing the website, onepintfilm.com, and the Facebook page, also One Pint Film. And we are planning to have a film festival premiere anytime between late summer and I would say late fall of this year. So I will keep you folks updated, and definitely, invite you if the premiere happens to be in your neck of the woods.
And that's One Pint Film. That's one spelt out, O-N-E. So don't look for the number one. It's O-N-E, Pint Film. Thank you so much for joining us. That's going to do it for this episode of Better on Draft 256. If you're listening live, obviously stay tuned for the news segment afterwards. If not, the news segment will be released on Monday, February 3rd, or February. Geez.
February. Hey, see you in 2022.
It's going to be May 3rd. So definitely go check that out for the news segment. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. We definitely ended on a flub by me, but that's okay. No matter what you think of your beer, we think it's Better on Draft. Have a good night.
Peace.